Oh, it's all happening. So, welcome to the Breast Cancer Rehabilitation and Wellness Summit. My name is Denise Stewart, and today we're going to be talking about managing fatigue. I've got Jo Muirhead and Kylie Worry. Girls, have a wave. Oh, yeah, you have
Hi.
to say something. And Kylie, so you have to say something so you can get on.
Hi, you got my name right. Well done.
It's always tricky. And so let me tell you about these girls. They're real, I say girls, in the kindest way.
I don't mind at all.
Makes me feel young. I love it. Go for it. Bring it on.
So they're rehabilitation counselors and coaches. And what happened was that for Jo, in 2014, she noticed a growing problem with people reporting fatigue as the biggest barrier for being able to return to their work following cancer. And the health professionals know energy conservation programs. They're the things that people are offered in the hospital or in the cancer center. And Jo noticed that this wasn't really getting some people to where they needed to be. So Jo started the Purple Co Fatigue Management Program. And so Kylie is a trainee of this management program and has in fact learned to manage her own fatigue, including that dreaded brain fog. I'll call it frog because sometimes it feels like that. So through her training in the delivery of the program, she's gained incredibly useful insight into her own energy management, and she's going to share that with us today. So Jo and Kylie have been very creative here, and they're going to have an interview session, and so that we can get a better feel of what this program is. Thanks, Kylie, and thanks, Jo.
Thank you, Denise. And we're really thrilled to be able to present or talk to you about what we've learned in terms of energy management and fatigue management. So I'm not a cancer survivor, but what I had noticed in the community was there was this continuing phrase that popped up when for a person that had been cleared of cancer or their treatment had all been finished. So they were kind of left with this presentation that they should be fine, and they weren't fine, and they didn't feel the way they used to, and they sound so tired all the time. And then we'd have medical professionals saying to us, well, they'll be able to consider training or going back to work or participating in their previously enjoyed activities when their fatigue resolves. But there was never any plan or suggestions on what this resolution could look like. So for some reason, there was this expectation that you'd go from fatigued to not fatigued by resting. And while most of us know that that works for physical fatigue when you're a well person, so sports people or anyone who does any physical training will know that you rest a fatigued part of the body and it recovers. It's not the same for somebody living with a chronic health condition like post-cancer fatigue. So what I thought we would do today is I would ask Kylie some questions, because she's not only now a facilitator of the program, but she's also a post-cancer survivor. So I feel like she's got incredible wealth of knowledge to talk about. And there's something quite specific that we want to talk about today, because we could provide all sorts of education around all sorts of things. But it's been a real delight for me to watch Kylie understand the three fatigues. And we're going to talk about these three different fatigues, because we're all very used to this thing called physical fatigue. It's how we're used to experiencing fatigue. But anyone who has done any level of concentration will know about cognitive fatigue, which we often call brain fog or frog. And then we also have a fatigue around our emotions. And this is the one that I've noticed is ignored or just completely not talked about at all, where I'm finding more and more people need help with learning how to recover from this. So Kylie, would you mind sharing with us a brief summary of your post-cancer journey?
Sure. So I was diagnosed in November 2013, and I'm the sort of person that I do everything quickly. So I did my cancer journey pretty quickly as well. And I had a double mastectomy, chemotherapy, hormone therapy, and reconstruction was all done within 9 months from diagnosis to finish. It should have taken nearly 2 years, but I was really keen. I felt like the sooner I got it done, the sooner I could forget this happened to me and get on with my life, was the way I thought about it. And something that was really interesting to me was after I'd had the final surgery of reconstruction, and I was still on hormone treatment, but working out what I was going to do about that, I decided to go back to my pre-injury type work, which was my own training and consulting coaching business. And I did a couple of days here and there, and I just found that I was not coping. I wasn't able to go a whole day. I wasn't able to bounce back. And I would do a half a day or a day of work, and then I'd be in bed for 4 days, and that wasn't me. It wasn't how I could run a business. So I started to get a little bit nervous, but my thinking was, if I work harder, it'll get better, which, as you know, and I've now learnt, does not work with chronic fatigue. It does not like to be treated that way. So I remember going to my doctors, and exactly like you said in the beginning, they said to me, well, you should be feeling better. There's no reason why you don't feel bad. Your bloods look great. Your liver's great. Everything's great. There's no reason. So I would leave feeling like I was a failure, feeling like I was a whinger, and pushing harder, because there was no reason that I shouldn't be pushing harder. No one told me to rest. No one told me. They mentioned post-cancer fatigue, but they didn't mention chronic fatigue, so I didn't make the link at all. I just thought, I'm just tired. So if I'm sleeping okay, I should, and I'm eating all the right things. I was very conscious about health and diet and all those things. I felt like there should be no reason why. And so a part of me thought I was imagining a big portion of this. So I just kept pushing myself, and I pushed myself to the point where I then developed vertigo as another complication of my chronic fatigue. So now what happens to me when I get to the point where I'm not listening to my body, I end up in bed for 4 or 5 days with vertigo. So my body's really screaming at me to listen and do things differently, but I just wasn't taught any other way. So that was sort of how my constant struggle with this sort of post-cancer fatigue began.
Gosh. So when you went to the doctors, and the thing is that what we're trying to help people understand is Kylie's a health professional. So for Kylie to be able to turn up to a doctor and go, and the doctor go, well, everything's fine, and Kylie goes, I don't feel fine, and not be able to express what that lack of being fine or define it in some ways, it now is an incredible burden for us, because we want to be able to help people advocate for their own choices and their own health around this stuff as well. So Kylie, did you then get any, after a period of time, any support to look at how you could manage your fatigue?
I was referred after about 2.5 years to a fatigue management program at one of the major hospitals here in Sydney. And it was a program that was run by a clinical psychologist and an exercise physiologist. So I was hopeful that that would be something that made a difference for me. And look, the clinical psychologist was fantastic, just in terms of mindset and me realising in more ways how my perfectionism, for example, was adding to things. So I did learn some things that were helpful, things that I hadn't sort of translated across to this whole illness or post-cancer journey. So that was helpful. But to be honest with you, no, it didn't help my fatigue. It really didn't. And I kept, the thing that I suppose was the most frustrating thing for me was I kept thinking it was just going to get resolved, because that's what the doctors were, as you said in the beginning as well. I just kept thinking that one day I will wake up and I'll be okay. And it was almost like every day that didn't happen, a little bit more of me got chipped away. A little bit more of me got disappointed. A little bit more of me got sick of failing every day, and that's what I felt I was doing. And it's so interesting when I look back now, I wasn't failing at all. In fact, I think it was a bit of a miracle to think of what I did achieve. And it's a shame that I put myself through that, because I didn't know another way to be, and I wasn't given any support to find another way to be. So eventually I did have an income protection claim, as a lot of people do that have a diagnosis of cancer, and eventually I think they got so sick of me not getting any better that they said, let's do an exercise program. And I thought, well, I used to love exercise, great, let's do something that could help. And the interesting thing with that was I crashed and burned. And I couldn't understand why. This guy he was a professional. He said he knew everything about fatigue. He gave me a prescribed program. I stuck to the program. I did everything I was meant to do, and I just got worse and worse and worse. And I could not understand. Again, the failure word comes up for me. I felt like, what am I doing here? And it was around that time that I started consulting again as a rehab counsellor and learning about the fact that there are other people out there like me that are struggling. And also but there were people that were getting well. So that was where I think it wasn't until I actually learned about your experiences and what you've been teaching people that my ears pricked up and went, oh, hang on, then maybe there's a different way to do this. And I had never heard about different types of fatigue. And thankfully I'd come to a place where I had started to accept that maybe my life was going to be like this moving forward, and that I wasn't, at least if I woke up and I wasn't better, I hadn't failed. It was maybe just my new normal. So that was a relief in a way, but I was still struggling pretty much until the last maybe 10 months to work out what on earth to do.
Wow. Thank you, Kylie. I appreciate your candor there. So we know that the medical fraternity haven't really got a solution for this. And I just want to touch on something that you said. I think anybody who is a survivor is a walking miracle, because 5 or 6 years ago we weren't supposed to survive. So one of the things I like to express to all my post-cancer survivor clients is you're actually ahead of medical science here. That medical science hasn't caught up with the fact that you are a survivor. So we're actually writing the history of how we're going to help the generations to come on how we're going to help them manage fatigue. I'm sorry that you guys are ladies are guinea pigs in the first instance, but at least you've got somebody listening to that. So you also touched on the fact that nobody had helped you understand that there was physical fatigue, cognitive fatigue, and emotional fatigue.
No.
And it sounds like the psychologists and the exercise physiologists were trying to help you understand one part of something that might be a multifaceted problem. Is that kind of what your experience had been like?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing that I got from the program I did through the hospital was this whole idea of the boom bust cycle, and that I somehow had to try and get out of that and find a happy medium of managing my energy, which was great, but because I didn't understand what was causing it, I never got to the point of ever managing it really well. I think until I learned the different types of fatigue and what brought it on and what triggered it and what that looked like for me, I never really got out of that boom bust cycle until I learned that. That was really critical for me to learn.
And it sounds like the exercise physiology program, and we're not saying don't do it, we're just saying it's not right for everyone all the time, is that was actually perpetuating your boom bust cycle.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I understand now why. And it's because for me, the physical fatigue is one of my biggest symptoms. And so for me, physical activity does not improve my fatigue. I have clients that I've now taught the fatigue management program to, and they can have the worst emotional or cognitive fatigue and go to the gym and feel pretty good. That's not me. I go for a 20-minute walk and I'm in bed. Like, it just wipes me out. It's almost like I've got this little bucket of physical energy that I've got for the day. And when I use that, however I use that, that's it for the day. So I either have a great steady 4 hours at my computer working and doing some great work, or I go for a walk and do a little bit of housework and I'm done.
Yeah.
It just seems to be the way that it works for me.
And that's a very concrete example of helping us understand how physical fatigue turns up for people, because we're so used to expressing physical fatigue. So it's usually, you feel it in your body, and basically your body doesn't want to work. You don't want to walk up the stairs. I've heard people express that, if I have to cook dinner, I'm going to cry. Or
I've stood at the oven and I haven't been able to stir a saucepan. My arms are so heavy that the thought of even picking up a wooden spoon and stirring is too much.
Yeah.
And for someone who's been a competitive sports person for most of her life, it boggles my mind, and it frustrated me no end until I could understand what was happening and why it was happening.
So talk to me about cognitive fatigue or brain fog, because this comes up a lot. It's usually the first thing you and I hear about now when we have a client that's referred to us. They go, I've got to get rid of this brain fog. Can you explain what that's like for you? How does that turn up for you? I feel like I'm never really out of brain fog. There's always a degree of it, but it's definitely improved for me when I've stopped pushing myself to that through that boom bust cycle.
So for me, managing my physical energy has then meant that I've also been able to manage my cognitive energy a little bit better. And for me, it's also been appreciating when are the best times of the day for me, and working with those cycles, because like, for example, this is almost even like just tipping the balance for me, because I normally wouldn't be doing much at this time of day. Thank goodness it's easy to talk about yourself, so I don't find it too hard to do that right now. But if I was, for example, trying to write a report right now, it would be gobbledygook. It wouldn't make any sense at all. So appreciating the times of the day for me, looking after my nutrition, meditation's been huge, helping my brain have a rest from things, and not allowing myself time to not worry, drop the perfectionism, all of those things that put a pressure, I think, on our cognitive load or how much we're using our brain. Backing off on that and learning what does that for me and backing off on it and balancing that has been really critical for me. But for me, you know, I'm the sort of person that if I'm having a bad brain day, I'll try and open my house with my car keys. You know, I'll find weird things in my fridge. Like, it's just, my brain just isn't working, and I'm going through the motions, but nothing's in order. So it just doesn't work, doesn't flow.
Yeah. And it's so normal. Like for me to meet a post-cancer patient now who doesn't express brain fog, I'm concerned that they're actually not telling me the whole truth.
Yes.
Nothing to be embarrassed about.
Yes.
So when you start looking at the neuroscience behind what's actually going on, we haven't got time for that today, but it makes perfect sense. And when you've actually had things done to your body that kills off all the bad cells, you're actually killing off the good ones too.
Exactly.
Brain. You know, we ask it to do so much, and sometimes it needs a rest. And I think that what you gave as an example of meditation has been a wonderful way to help your brain rest. Again, it's not for everybody. For some people, it's playing music. For some people, it's reading. For some people, it's playing with a pet. For some people, it's that state just before sleep. But again, the thing I love about this fatigue management program is that we actually help clients work out what these things are for themselves.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah.
So it's a bit of fun there. Okay.
Yeah.
So talk to us about emotional fatigue, because this is probably the thing I'm most passionate about, because it's the thing I would have ignored if it wasn't so in my face.
Yeah, look, it's so funny because I think emotional fatigue, certainly, I notice it when... Well, I've been very, very good at removing difficult, toxic relationships and people from my life since I got sick, because I realized what a huge part that played in me becoming unwell. And I was so determined that wasn't going to be my future. So I've been very good at putting boundaries around myself like that. But you can't escape your emotions, and people that you love can be difficult. So we are always going to be battling with, you know, that emotional fatigue. And it's interesting that the place where it shows up for me is probably still mostly professionally, because of the nature of the work that I do. I do put a lot of emotional energy into the work that I do, and I'm very much an empath. So I tune into people without even trying to, and can sometimes take on what they're feeling. So for me, I've got to really manage that. So I try not to do more than 2 face-to-face client sessions a day maximum. That's more than enough for me. And if I'm training a group, I have to have 2 days either side to sort of be able to do that, because I describe myself as being a bit like a human thermometer for emotions. So if I'm in a room with people and there are 10 other people in the room, I can feel everybody's emotions and how they're going with something. If I'm teaching them something, have they got it? Have they not? Are they confused? Are they anxious? What do I do about that? And I don't switch off until that session's finished. So if I'm doing a half-day session, I'm completely spent by the end of that. So I've got very much, it shows up for me in terms of my brain shutting down, but also it shows up physically again. I'll find myself on the way traveling home. It's like I just hit this wall and I can hardly lift my feet to walk, can't carry my bag. It just, I noticed it the other day after being in a room full of people that I was doing a session with, and I felt fantastic. I was lit up because I love what I do. And then about 20 minutes later, it just hit me like this wall. And I was like, wow, I'm done. I'm totally spent. So it's really interesting. I'm still learning about how it shows up, to be honest.
Oh, and I think the thing I've noticed as well is I've worked with some clients now. We've done the fatigue management program, and then every 3 months we do a couple of sessions together as a bit of a refresh. Because I think as we recover and as we are able to build more capacity into our lives, or as we become to a different life stage, we need to relearn or re-trigger what it is that we need to think about.
Absolutely.
So I've had quite a lot of post-cancer clients talk to me about how they're resentful of their children because their children take up so much of their energy. And it's not the running around after the children, it's the emotional intensity that little people require of us for a fixed period of time, and then they can go to bed and we feel like we have to clean up after them. And helping people learn how to make different decisions about the energy that they've got. So you mentioned before, it's like you've got a bucket of physical energy, so they've got a bucket of cognitive energy, and we've got a bucket of emotional energy. And they're not necessarily all equal in their measure. You might have 5 pieces on a Monday, but you might only have 3 on a Tuesday, and there doesn't need to be any trigger or cause for that. There's nothing wrong with you.
And that's a big thing, because I would spend so much time trying to understand and analyze that as well. So even just learning that, you know, some days it might be here and some days it might be here. Like that was a gift in itself, because the amount of emotional and cognitive energy that you put into trying to understand something that doesn't have an answer, like what a waste of time that is. So that was a gift to know that.
Yes. Wonderful. So Kylie, what's one thing that you would like people watching this recording to know? What do you want them to know from your experience?
I want them to know that their experience is normal, and I want them to know that it doesn't have to stay, if they feel out of control, that it doesn't have to stay there, that there are things that they can learn that can empower them. And it's interesting, I went from feeling like my life was out of control and that I was a failure and that nothing was ever going to be the same again, to now I can honestly step back and go, my illness was a gift. I never would have learned about myself, and I never would have put the focus on self-care like I've had to since I've had this illness. I just would not have done that, because I didn't need to. I was all about giving out and giving to others and emptying myself. And while I was well, I could do that. And I know now it would have always ended somehow, probably not very nicely. But while I was in that zone, it felt like it was going to go on forever, like you do when you feel a bit bulletproof. But what I've learned about that gift of self-care and looking after me, and that it's okay to prioritize me, because then I can even give more potentially to others, that never would have happened unless I'd had this experience. So going from feeling like a complete failure to having this incredible gift given to me that I can now share with others as well, that's pretty amazing. So I would like other people to take from that, because carrying around the burden of I'm not enough, I'm never going to get better again, my life's over, that's really heavy to carry. And if you're tired as well, or if you've got fatigue, that's too hard. So I want to lighten that for other people if possible, because that's how I feel now. And I do truly believe that I've been given an incredible gift.
Well, you're an incredible gift to us in this community. So thank you, Kylie, for sharing again.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to bring this interview to a close. So 3 things that we'd really like you to take away today. One is, if you're living post-cancer and you're experiencing fatigue, you're completely normal. As far as I'm concerned, you should be experiencing fatigue. You should be tired. And when we talk about fatigue, it's the kind of fatigue that is not, you don't feel restored after sleep. In fact, you wake up after sleep and you feel like you could sleep again. That's the type of fatigue we're talking about here. The second thing, not all fatigue is the same, and not all fatigue will be the same for every person. So think about, if you're feeling incredibly fatigued, what's gone on for the last 24 hours? Have you had an emotional upheaval? Now, good emotions and bad emotions, our body doesn't actually know the difference. Our adrenal glands just take it as being emotions. So you can actually feel exhausted after you've had a really positive emotional experience. I had to learn that. That was uncomfortable learning.
Me too.
So have a think about what you've been doing in the last 24 hours. Have you been trying to learn something new? Have you been trying to remember something? Have you been trying to help solve a problem? Are you feeling burdened by something? Or have you just done a heap of walking around the shopping centre and you were so focused on the task you didn't realise how much walking you did? And the next thing is, please understand that your fatigue can be managed. Now, neither Kylie and I do not have a magic wand to make it go away. We are not here to tell you that there is a fatigue cure. What we want to help you understand is you can learn how to put more into your life by learning what it is that you want to experience from your life. So try and think of the energy that you have as being finite, and you get to choose how you want to use it.
Yeah.
Strange concept. So there we go, Denise. Here's our interview.
Wow, Jo and Kylie, thank you very much. That has just opened my eyes to and also made me focus in on three things that I'm sure people that are listening are thinking, yes, and I'm sure that people with agreeing with Kylie when she was talking about exercising, and that it just didn't work.
Yeah.
What I would like to ask Jo, just for if you can offer me I'm going to say that again. What I would like, Jo, is for you to just give us an idea on what the coaching process would be. If someone decided that, and I would be thinking a coach would be a great resource, a great helping person to make this path a little smoother. What is it that people do?
Sure, that's a great question, and wasn't prepared for it. So we have 5 coaching sessions, which we would ideally love to deliver weekly for 5 weeks, but we actually appreciate that sometimes that's not possible. There's a 6th session that we do at 12 weeks since we started. So what we'd like to do is help people not only look at how they're feeling in the moment, but how they're feeling in 3 months' time. So it gives people because I can assure you, your fatigue will not be gone after 5 sessions of coaching. Sorry about that. This is not an exercise program. This is not a clinical psychology program. This is not a nutrition program. All we get you to do, well, not all we get you to do, spend 5 weeks pulling apart the life that you have, looking at your current activity levels and what are the things you would like to put back into your life that aren't there. We then talk to you about very OT concepts like pacing. So like Kylie was talking about, this boom bust cycle. Some people have a I can't do anything cycle, and there's incredible fear of activity avoidance going on there. So we help people understand why they've come up with those beliefs about themselves, and then we coach them through to, would you like to try and change? Now, the change is always small, because we do not want to set people up to fail. There's enough failure in this community. We don't want to contribute to that. So, for example, I've had one gentleman who used to be an executive in a company. He was a cancer survivor. His first goal was to be able to get his wheelie bin to the curb every week. That's where we had to start, but for him it was building on what he could do. So we take people through what they would like to be able to do and help them then usually cut that in half, because we all have unreasonable expectations of ourselves. We help them map their life for rest. So like Kylie was saying earlier, she's learnt when it's best for her to be on at work or doing report or heavy demanding tasks. We actually map people's activity levels and their exertion levels. We have a bit of a self-rating scale. It's not arduous, but there is a lot of data collection. So we get people to sit down and think about who they want to be now, rather than what can you do, who you want to be. And we get really the results that people talk about. We've had people go from I haven't been able to work for 7 years to I'm now doing 20 hours a week training. We've had people go, I could only work 20 hours a week. Now I can understand I can do 30 hours a week. But then again, we have had some people who go, I can now take the wheelie bin to the curb and I can pick up my children from school. So we don't have a prescription about what that activity level should be. It's like Kylie was saying before, it's about you taking back control of your life.
And can I just add in there something, one of the biggest gifts for me in the program was actually having the help to discuss my fatigue with my family in a way that was helpful. That was huge for me. Like being able to show my husband, and look, my family are supportive. I'm really blessed to have a supportive family, but they didn't get it. I didn't get it. So how could they get it? If the doctors don't get it and I didn't get it, they had no chance of getting it. But I was able to sit them down at breakfast one morning, show them this beautiful exercise that I'd gone through with my coach and learn how to do this. And I showed my family, and it was like the light bulbs came on. And from there, as a family, we then worked out, how are we going to move forward in this and support you, Mum? And that was life-changing. Like, it really was. So it wasn't just me that learned stuff here. It was my whole support unit, which is pretty amazing. And I know with the clients that I work with, that's part of our program. So that to me is priceless.
Yeah.
And Jo, sorry, I'm just going to get the video to come over to me. Oh, if it gets there. But if someone is sitting watching this and they're thinking, this is exactly what I want, do they have to come to Australia, to your town, to receive this service?
Oh, no. We've delivered this program in a room, and we also deliver it online. So we've had clients all over Australia. I've worked with clients to the US. As long as you've got an internet connection that's relatively stable, I prefer to be able to see people. So I prefer to do it as a video conference, because I'm very good at reading people's fatigue signs, even when they're not good at reading their fatigue signs now. And the thing is, we don't add a whole heap of extra stuff into your week. This program is done within your week. So that's not arduous, because you've got a fatigue condition. Don't ask me to do anything else.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to congratulate you, Kylie, for sharing your very personal experience and giving us real examples of how you've been able, you've experienced this, and then that you've been able to move forward with good information. And I also want to thank you, Jo, because it actually takes individuals like you across the world to look at something different, to listen to people when they actually say, I'm still tired, I'm still fatigued, I've done what I've been told. So I really appreciate, and I guess I'm thanking you on behalf of all the people that are sitting nodding for putting that extra effort into looking at fatigue and post-cancer fatigue. Thanks, Jo, and thanks, Kylie.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.